It depends on the approach of producing templates. And obviously, we've been in this business for a long time, so we've kind of seen and tried many different approaches. But a lot of the approaches rely on, as you say, a programmatic way of doing it, which basically means writing code. So you need a developer who understands modern programming techniques, really, to put this together. And you can get some great results from that. There's kind of nothing wrong with that. The trouble is that tool isn't really suitable for the people who are going to be doing the job. So the direction that we've taken is to go for sort of a more of a drag and drop approach. We're expecting that source material is going to be created in Adobe Tools because that's industry standard. We've got a very straightforward way to bring those in and then completely manipulate them within the environment of the tool on the web. So no special tools required once it's inside the system. So for example, with an InDesign file, you can completely change the design inside the system. You don't have to go back to the original artwork. And that wasn't the case even with our previous generation of the tool. But the difference there is that you are always operating in the framework of kind of the original piece you created in the Adobe framework. So all of the objects, the image objects, the text objects, they're all manipulated in the same way. And you can actually make the system produce output that kind of is compatible with Adobe format. And that's kind of quite a unique capability. Now, think about that and contrast that with the approach and the approach that makes this difficult and problematic is that some organizations, yes, they can make a template, but the way they do that is they'd see your original InDesign work and they have to recreate that all in code. They couldn't import any of that. So everything has to be rebuilt by hand. So you can think about the time you're introducing there. Mistakes that are going to be made. Again, it's a human doing it, so a human's going to make mistakes. So they position something wrong, the fonts are wrong, they haven't, built in the flexibility that's perhaps needed to support something because it's not become apparent. So you've got then that whole cycle of kind of checking the template and working with a third party. Whereas if you kind of brought the material in yourself and then adjusted it yourself, and it can do this very, very quickly with our tool, there's a whole step that it doesn't actually exist there.
So the designer's doing that. The designer who created the file in InDesign, who created the layers and all the rules in there, is now doing the same thing.
It can be that, but often, you may still get your creative created by a creative agency. So, I mean, the initial idea might come from somewhere else. So they will provide some information. But, I mean, traditionally what happened is that information would then go to a production agency. So they would take a creative idea and they would turn it into kind of practical output that could be used in different situations. But obviously everyone's being built by hand. So if they needed 40 web banners to do different sizes, they'd actually have to build 40 web banners. So the technology that we're speaking about here, that can handle all of that for you. So it might be that it's the people who made the original files, but it might be the people who are in the marketing department who perhaps have the tools because they had to look at that material and then kind of make have a discussion with a production agency. Well, they could set the template up easier than having to brief the production agency of what they need to do. They could set this up in the tool themselves and then they've kind of got it. And it's got all the resizing capabilities in there. They can control all of the elements. They can actually make changes to the creative. So if they want to kind of run a follow-on campaign, they perhaps don't even need to go back to the creative agency. They can move things around themselves, drop different background imagery. They've got something brand new there. I think that's the biggest barrier. People think, well, I won't have time to do that. It'll be far too complicated. But we have, we've got many, many examples of people who started like that, thinking they need people to help them. And in fact, they figured out it was very, very easy for them to do it themselves.